Afternoon guys, and welcome back to the Rotation Diaries. My name's Kris, and this week I'm going to be talking about my experience in general medicine. So general medicine is one of the rotations that every doctor has to do in their internship. But depending on the hospital that you go to, it may be as broad as mine or it may be quite specific. So I remember as a very naive fourth year medical student, I heard someone say that their rotation was medicine, and I thought, duh, we're all med students. What do you mean you're in the medicine rotation? So obviously, if I didn't know when I was in my fourth year out of 6, you guys watching may not necessarily know what it means. So general medicine is the ward on the hospital where we look after people with things like pneumonia, sepsis, severe infections, but also things like dementia, Alzheimer's, and that sort of thing that wouldn't otherwise fit into a surgical or a psychiatric category. It's a very broad array of things, and in my hospital, general medicine also encompassed renal medicine and oncology. The reason I mention this is in my second year, so in 2018, my second round of general medicine, I was on both the renal and oncology teams for a time. The way my hospital worked is that we would have 4 different teams in general medicine. They were all color coded, so team blue would be the team doing this floor, team red would be that one. Team purple was often the stroke / the older people's ward, and then what color I haven't, I said green would be something else. Gen Med was definitely a learning curve for me. So it's one of the core rotations, like I've said, and it's definitely core to your experience as a medical graduate as well, because no matter where you end up in medicine, you need to have an understanding of the general things, hence why general medicine is so general. Again, just like every other video, this is all based on my experience, and your experience may be so different. You may not do a general medicine term. You may solely do a term in something like hepatology or neurology or renal medicine or oncology, and that's fine. Like I said, still my experience though. So my experience in general medicine in my internship was definitely a learning curve, for sure. So I did both day shifts and night shifts and evening shifts. And this was the first rotation where I had the dreaded ward call. So what is ward call? Ward call is where you are the only doctor in the hospital for that particular ward other than the registrar. So in my hospital, when I was on general medicine ward call, any issues with cannulas, things needing to be charted, people spiking fevers, people with chest pain or pain in general, anything like that came straight to me. Luckily, I did have a registrar with me, but they would normally spend their time in the emergency department for admissions. We rarely saw each other. Ward call was hectic. So in my hospital, if there were 5 wards with general medicine patients on them, with about 30 in each ward, we're looking at about 100 plus people that I was looking after. And hey, for some hospitals, ward call can be for the whole hospital. So don't get me wrong, this is not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely intimidating, especially for a first year out, 6 months out, 24-year-old. But I survived, and you can too. So ward call shifts are normally started around 8 p.m. and finished at 9 o'clock the next morning. Again, nowhere near as bad as some of the Americans I hear who do 24 or 36-hour call shifts, but still, it was a learning curve. The whole night would be very full of cannulas, so needing drips replaced, things that need to be charted, but of course you would also carry what was called the Met Pager, or if someone needed help right then, right now, you had to be there. Quite often I was the first person on the scene, and so I had to really gather the information quickly to hand over to the intensive care team and the cardiology teams when they arrived, if needed. I smile a lot because I do have a lot of fond memories of ward call. Maybe it's masochism, maybe it's because I learned a lot, but I remember absolutely pooping myself before my ward call. But ward call was not all that my general medicine rotation was, though it feels like it because I did a lot of nights. Just like every other rotation, my role as an intern and a junior house officer was get there early, do the handover sheet, attend handover, and attend ward rounds. Because of how many patients we'd have, our ward rounds could go for 5 hours. So they could go from 9 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you'd have from 1 till 5 or 6 to do everything else. Pop in cannulas, write discharge summaries, investigate things, get reports back, so on and so forth. The life of a junior doctor is really hard to describe because it varies a lot. I quite like variety. I can't think of any particular highlights from my general medicine rotations other than the fact that I learnt a lot on them, and it's a bit of a cop-out answer, I know, but we didn't have any sort of big success stories or major diagnoses, but we did have a couple of lowlights. Before I get to the lowlights though, just remember I enjoyed this rotation. The lowlight definitely was calling deaths. So what that means is when someone passes in the hospital, the on-call doctor or the doctor who was looking after them would have to go and pronounce a death. This is a whole other video in itself, but essentially we spend 2 to 3 minutes trying to get the person to respond to us, listening to the chest, rubbing the sternum, that sort of thing. And if they didn't, and we could see no signs of active life, then we would pronounce them deceased. This is definitely difficult. Not physically, but mentally. Again, this is a whole other video, but I remember calling my first death and then having to tell the family, yes, I'm sorry, your loved one has deceased. Well, it really ate at me. It's a part of the job and something that I'm more comfortable with now, but not in the way that I'm like, ugh, another death, it's fine, but where I don't get eaten up about it. I still cry, and you know, that's the honest truth if I have to give bad news, but I don't do it in front of the patients, and I've learned how to better deal with it myself. So there's no shame in feeling emotion, you're human. As for tips and tricks for general medicine, I feel like a broken record. Come prepared, be eager, say I don't know but I'll find out if you're asked a question and you don't know. Keep snacks on you, keep spare things on you. Really, by the end of it, you're gonna just hear the same stuff from me. Every rotation is very similar in that matter. If you wanted any books, I'll leave a couple of pictures here of books that I recommend for general medicine, but honestly, I just use the therapeutic guidelines, so the online ones. That's where I got a lot of my information from. It's where we would base everything off, got me through the rotation. So, time for the diary entries. The 11th of June 2017. I'm nervous about starting on med, but I'm eager to get good at it, to be a good intern and a good doctor. I'm keen for routine and for being organised and fast. I feel a little bit ripped off by my roster, switching between all the teams and doing 4 full weekends in a row of ward call. How tiring. But hey, what can you do? 21st of the 7th, 2017. I cried on ward call today. It's my second day on ward call and I've had enough. Everyone needed me, there was a met call, and I spent 1 to 2 hours with the distraught daughter. I knew her mother was going to die, and I did everything in my power to stop myself from thinking about my own mother. I got back, and I found out the bloods that I'd ordered from the met call never went. Game over, I couldn't stop crying. I feel like I'm not cut out for this job, a failure, a true imposter. I felt sick to my stomach, but I finished my shift, came home, bawled my eyes out, then went to bed. The sun still rose, and I went to work. I haven't cried since, and upon reflection, I regret showing so much emotion, but I don't regret feeling that way. I'm human. I'm 6 months into my career and I'm 24 years old. I'm allowed to feel overwhelmed, to feel upset. I feel stronger for it now because I choose to be, but oh my god, that was a f***ing nightmare. Ward call sucks. We are expected to know every patient and their story and exactly what their home team wants. Spoiler alert, the home team doesn't even know what they want. 100% understand why the registrars hate crappy handovers. The amount of times I wanted to scream from frustration is over 9,000. I try to be nice, obviously, but it's hard not to get snappy. That's just me. I feel a little bit better about charting things like warfarin and heparin and insulin now. Hashtag experience. 22nd of the 7th. Gen Med in general is fine, don't get me wrong. I prefer the rolling roster than the bed-based roster, and I prefer being the one to drive. I guess I like the control, because I like to truly know what's going on. Ward call has thankfully numbed me to inserting cannulas and venesection. I can't wait for this term to end though. I don't really want to do it next year, but it's better than some of the alternatives. The 6th of August 2017. Med is actually okay at the moment. I think the head registrar has deemed that I'm okay, and she hasn't come after me at all. She talks to me about things that aren't work related sometimes, which is nice. I didn't really write much when I was in my second year. Just a lot of things going on, and I didn't write much in my diary about work. The only thing I really do have is the 1st of May 2018. General Med is finally over. Finally. My last renal week ended up being nights. Ugh. Look, I don't mind nights. I really don't. I like relying on myself and how not busy it can be. I do not love the effed up sleep. The fact that I hardly see my husband, or the fact that I feel isolated at times. But it was good for my wallet, I suppose. So I didn't really write much for my second year in Gen Med, mostly because I really only wrote for the really negative times to get all of that thought and clutter from here down on paper. But don't let this jade you. General medicine's a fantastic rotation. And if you want to do any sort of physician training, it's your bread and butter. You have to do it. Luckily for me, I knew what I wanted to do, and so I did the rotations and not a second more. For me, it wasn't what I wanted to do, and that's okay. But just remember that whilst I might look confident on the wards, or another person on the wards might look confident, we could be thinking things like this or writing things like this in our diaries at night. So don't ever think that someone's got it all together or that they find everything easy. Sometimes you do have to fake it till you make it. I hope this hasn't turned you off general medicine, and I hope in some way it makes you feel okay to have those really down moments. But if you have any questions, let me know. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.